In the African savanna, nature follows strict rules that have remained unchanged for millennia. Predators hunt prey, mothers protect their young, and species stay within their own kind. But sometimes, the wild breaks its own rules in ways that leave even the most experienced scientists speechless. Deep in Tanzania's Ngorongoro conservation area, one of the most extraordinary stories of maternal love ever documented was about to unfold. This vast wilderness, home to some of Africa's most magnificent creatures, would become the stage for an event so rare that researchers initially refused to believe their own eyes. Her name was Nosikitok, a young lioness in her prime, strong and capable. She belonged to a small pride that ruled the grasslands near the crater's edge, where prey was abundant and life should have been relatively peaceful. But Nosikitok carried a deep sadness that other lions couldn't understand. She had recently lost her own cubs to a pack of hyenas during a brutal night attack. The loss had devastated her. While other lionesses in her pride moved on, focusing on survival and the next mating season, Nosikitok wandered the territory alone, her maternal instincts still burning strong with nowhere to direct them. She would often be found near the den where her cubs had died, calling out softly, as if hoping they might somehow return. What happened next would challenge everything we thought we knew about animal behavior and the boundaries between species. Scientists estimate that only once in every several million animal interactions does something like this occur. A predator adopting the offspring of another predator species. The odds of witnessing such an event are astronomical, yet here, in this remote corner of Africa, nature was about to write a new chapter. The story begins on a cool morning when Nosikitok encountered something that would change her life forever. 3 tiny leopard cubs, barely 2 weeks old, huddled together beneath an acacia tree. Their mother had been killed by a male leopard during a territorial dispute, and now these helpless babies faced certain death. In the wild, orphaned cubs rarely survive more than a day or two. Any normal lion would have seen these cubs as either a threat to eliminate or, more likely, an easy meal. Leopards and lions are natural enemies, competing for the same prey and territory. Adult leopards often lose their lives to lion attacks, and lions routinely kill leopard cubs when they find them. What Nosikitok did next defied millions of years of evolutionary programming. She approached the crying cubs slowly, her massive form towering over them. The cubs, too young to understand the danger, looked up at her with desperate eyes, mewing softly. Something in Nosikitok's grieving heart recognized their helplessness, their need for a mother. In that moment, instead of following her predatory instincts, she made a choice that would shock the scientific community. But adopting these cubs was just the beginning. What Nosikitok didn't know was that her own pride would soon discover what she had done, and their reaction would determine whether these leopard babies lived or died. The greatest challenge of her life was about to begin. Nosikitok gently picked up the first leopard cub by the scruff of its neck. The way lionesses carry their own babies, the tiny spotted creature went limp instinctively, trusting this giant predator completely. One by one, she carefully lifted each cub and began the long journey back to her den, hidden among the rocky outcrops 2 miles away. Her movements were deliberate and protective, as if she had been caring for these cubs since birth. The cubs were dangerously weak, their small bodies trembling from hunger and exposure. Their leopard mother had been dead for almost 24 hours, meaning they hadn't nursed in all that time. For newborns, this young dehydration and starvation can kill within 48 hours. Their eyes were barely open, and their spots, which would one day help them hide in the dappled forest light, now made them look even more vulnerable against the golden grass. Nosikitok seemed to sense their desperate condition, moving quickly but carefully, pausing every few hundred yards to rest and check on them. What makes this behavior so remarkable is that Nosikitok had never raised cubs to adulthood herself. Her own litter had died when they were just 3 weeks old, victims of a hyena attack that happened while she was away hunting. The trauma of finding her den empty, with only traces of blood and torn fur remaining, had left her emotionally scarred. Yet somehow, her maternal instincts remained perfectly intact, knowing exactly how to handle these fragile lives. She treated each leopard cub with the same tenderness she would have shown her own offspring, as if caring for them could somehow heal the wound in her heart. The journey back to her territory was more perilous than it might seem. Hyenas patrolled these grasslands constantly, traveling in packs of 15 or 20 individuals. They would have no hesitation in killing defenseless cubs of any species. In fact, they prefer easy targets. Nosikitok had to cross 2 open plains where she would be completely exposed, visible for hundreds of yards in any direction. She waited for cloud cover to dim the afternoon sun before making each crossing, instinctively understanding that drawing attention now could doom her adoptive babies. Every few minutes she would stop, set the cub down gently, and scan the horizon with her keen eyes, searching for any signs of danger. If you love extraordinary real-life stories from the animal kingdom like this one, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss these incredible documentaries that show the true wonders of nature. Now let's continue with Nosikitok's remarkable journey. During one of these crossings, a herd of zebras spotted her and began their alarm calls, sharp, barking sounds that echo across the savannah. These calls serve as a warning system for all prey animals, but they also alert every predator within earshot that something interesting is happening. Within minutes, Nosikitok noticed vultures beginning to circle overhead, attracted by the commotion. Vultures don't just follow death, they follow anything unusual, knowing that unusual situations often lead to opportunities. She had to move faster now, despite her exhaustion. Finally, as the sun began to set and painted the African sky in shades of orange and red, Nosikitok reached her den. It was a shallow cave formed by 3 large boulders, protected on 3 sides with only one entrance to defend. The location was perfect. Elevated enough to see approaching danger, sheltered enough to hide vulnerable cubs. She carefully placed each cub inside, arranging them in the exact spot where her own babies had once slept, her movements tender and deliberate. Then she lay down on her side and allowed them to nurse, curling her massive body around their tiny frames. This moment was critical for their survival. Lionesses can only produce milk if they've recently given birth, or if they're stimulated by nursing cubs. Nosikitok had lost her litter just 10 days earlier, meaning her milk hadn't completely dried up yet. The leopard cubs latched on desperately, their tiny paws kneading against her belly the way all feline babies do. Miraculously, they began to feed. Their tiny purrs of contentment filled the den, a sound that had been absent for too long. For the first time since losing her own cubs, Nosikitok felt the familiar weight and warmth of babies depending on her, needing her, and something broken inside her began to mend. As night fell over the African plains and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Nosikitok kept watch at the entrance of her den, her new cubs sleeping peacefully behind her for the first time in days. But in the distance, carried on the evening wind, she could hear the familiar roaring calls of her pride. They were looking for her, their voices growing louder with each passing minute, and they were getting closer. The pride found her just after midnight. Oldonyo, the massive male lion who ruled their territory, arrived first, his deep roars announcing his presence from hundreds of yards away. Behind him came Nashipai and Selenkai, the 2 experienced lionesses who had been Nosikitok's companions for years. They had been searching for her since sunset, concerned by her unusual absence during their evening hunt. Nosikitok emerged from the den to greet them, positioning herself carefully at the entrance to block their view inside. She rubbed her head against Oldonyo's mane in the traditional greeting, then touched noses with the other females. Everything seemed normal on the surface, but the other lions could sense something was different about her. Her scent had changed subtly, carrying the milk smell of nursing, which confused them since they knew her cubs had died. Oldonyo tried to move past her toward the den entrance, following his instinct to inspect any potential threat or resource in his territory. Nosikitok blocked his path, her body language firm but not aggressive. This was highly unusual behavior. Lionesses never prevent the pride male from going anywhere he chooses. The big male growled in warning, asserting his dominance, but Nosikitok stood her ground, something desperate and determined burning in her eyes. Inside the den, one of the leopard cubs began to cry, its high-pitched mewing echoing softly in the night air. The sound was distinctly different from a lion cub's call, sharper, more urgent. Nashipai's ears pricked forward immediately, recognizing that something was very wrong. She moved toward the entrance, and this time when Nosikitok tried to block her, the older lioness pushed past with force. What Nashipai saw inside the den shocked her completely. 3 tiny spotted cubs lay huddled together in the darkness, their leopard markings clearly visible even in the dim moonlight. Her reaction was instant and violent. She lunged forward with a snarl, intent on killing these natural enemies before they could grow into competitors. Leopards and lions have fought over territory and prey for millions of years, and every lion instinctively knows to eliminate leopard cubs when they find them. Nosikitok threw herself between Nashipai and the cubs with a roar that shook the rocks around them. The 2 lionesses collided in a tangle of claws and teeth rolling in the dust outside the den. It wasn't a playful tussle. This was a serious fight between pride mates, something that rarely happens except during the most severe conflicts. Nashipai was larger and more experienced, but Nosikitok fought with the desperate strength of a mother protecting her babies. Oldonyo watched the fight with growing agitation, pacing back and forth and roaring his disapproval. Pride cohesion is essential for lion survival, and internal fighting weakens the entire group. After several violent seconds, he intervened with a massive roar, separating the 2 females with his bulk. Both lionesses backed away, breathing hard, blood trickling from minor wounds on their shoulders and faces. The dominant male approached the den entrance, and this time no one tried to stop him. He lowered his huge head and peered inside, his golden eyes studying the 3 leopard cubs. They stared back at him, too young to understand they were looking at their species' greatest enemy. For a long moment, everything hung in balance. One swipe of Oldonyo's massive paw could end all 3 lives instantly. What happened next would determine not just the fate of these leopard cubs, but whether Nosikitok would remain part of her pride. Oldonyo made his decision and slowly began to move forward into the den, his intentions unclear. Oldonyo sniffed each cub carefully, his enormous nose nearly the size of their entire bodies. The leopard babies remained perfectly still, frozen by instinct in the presence of this giant predator. After what felt like an eternity, the big male did something completely unexpected. He turned around and walked out of the den without harming them. He settled himself on a nearby rock, clearly communicating that he would tolerate this unusual situation, at least for now. Scientists who later studied this incredible event theorized that Oldonyo's decision came from recognizing Nosikitok's emotional state. Male lions are more intelligent and emotionally aware than most people realize. He had witnessed her grief after losing her cubs, seen her depression and isolation. Perhaps he understood, in whatever way lions understand such things, that these leopard babies were healing something broken inside his pride mate. Nashipai and Selenke were less accepting. They kept their distance from the den, occasionally growling their disapproval, but not directly challenging Oldonyo's decision. In lion society, the dominant male's word is law. If he tolerated these strange spotted cubs, the females would grudgingly accept it, even if every instinct told them this was wrong. The pride's unity had been tested, but it held, barely. Over the following days, Nosikitok devoted herself completely to her adoptive cubs. She nursed them every few hours, cleaned them with her rough tongue, and kept them warm during the cool desert nights. The cubs grew stronger quickly, their tiny bodies filling out as they received the nutrition they desperately needed. Their eyes, which had been barely open when she found them, now looked around with growing curiosity and awareness. The most remarkable aspect was how naturally Nosikitok performed her maternal duties. She taught the cubs to respond to her low calling sounds, the same vocalizations lionesses use with their own offspring. When one cub wandered too far from the den entrance, she would gently retrieve it, carrying it back by the scruff. When they played too roughly with each other, she would separate them with a soft paw, exactly as any good mother would do. By the end of the first week, the leopard cubs had nearly doubled in size. Their spots became more defined, their little legs grew stronger, and they began to show the playful curiosity characteristic of all young felines. They would tumble over each other, practice pouncing on Nosikitok's twitching tail, and make brave attempts to climb the rocks near the den entrance. Their soft, chirping calls filled the air whenever Nosikitok returned from brief hunting trips. What made this scene so touching was seeing these natural enemies coexisting peacefully. During rest periods, Nosikitok would lie on her side while the 3 leopard cubs climbed all over her, using her massive body as their personal playground. She watched them with the same patient, loving expression that any mother shows toward her children. The boundaries between species seemed to dissolve in these quiet moments of pure maternal affection. Even the other pride members began to soften slightly. Oldonyo would sometimes sit near the den, essentially standing guard, while Nosikitok went to drink water or relieve herself. He never interacted directly with the cubs, but his presence protected them from other threats. Nashipai, though still disapproving, stopped growling whenever she caught their scent on the wind. But while the pride adjusted to this unusual family, they remained unaware that greater dangers lurked in the surrounding territory. A coalition of 3 nomadic male lions had been spotted just 5 miles away, and they were moving closer to Nosikitok's den with each passing day. The 3 nomadic males were massive, battle-scarred warriors who'd been wandering the savannah for months, searching for a territory to claim as their own. These coalitions of males are among the most dangerous forces in the African wilderness. They travel together, hunt together, and fight together, making them nearly unstoppable. Their goal is always the same: find a pride, kill or drive away the resident male, and take over his females and territory. Nomadic males also have another brutal habit that ensures their genetic legacy. They kill all cubs they find, regardless of age or species. This forces the females to come into heat again within weeks, allowing the new males to father their own offspring. It's a harsh survival strategy that has evolved over millions of years, and it means that Nosikitok's leopard cubs were in grave danger from more than just their natural predator-prey relationship with lions. The nomads had caught the scent of Oldonyo's pride on the morning wind. They moved with purpose now, covering ground quickly, their massive paws leaving deep impressions in the sandy soil. These males were in their prime, between 5 and 8 years old, the age when male lions are at their most powerful and aggressive. Each weighed over 400 pounds of pure muscle and fury. Oldonyo detected their presence that afternoon. His reaction was immediate and instinctive. He began patrolling the borders of his territory, scent-marking every tree and rock, roaring challenges into the distance. His deep vocalizations carried for miles across the plains, warning the intruders that this territory was claimed and defended. But his pride was small, and he was just one male against 3. The odds were not in his favor. If you're hoping this remarkable family survives what's coming, please leave a like on this video. It truly helps us continue bringing you these incredible true stories from the natural world. Nosikitok sensed the tension immediately. Lions communicate through subtle body language and scent signals that humans can barely perceive. She knew that serious danger approached, and her first instinct was to protect her cubs. She began spending more time at the den entrance, watching the horizon with alert, worried eyes. The leopard cubs, now 3 weeks old, sensed their adoptive mother's anxiety and stayed close to her, their playfulness subdued. The problem was that the den's location, while good for everyday protection, was too close to the pride's central territory. If fighting broke out between Oldonyo and the nomadic males, it would happen near her cubs. She made a difficult decision. She would have to move them to a more remote location, somewhere the violence of male combat wouldn't reach. But moving cubs is always risky, especially cubs that smell like leopards in a landscape full of predators. She waited until dusk, when the fading light would provide some cover. One by one, she picked up each cub and began the dangerous journey to a secondary den she had discovered weeks earlier. A rocky crevice nearly 3 miles away, hidden in a dense thicket of acacia trees. The cubs whimpered during the journey, confused and frightened by the sudden change in routine. During the second trip back to collect the remaining cubs, Nosikitok encountered something that made her blood run cold. Fresh lion tracks, far larger than Oldonyo's, crossed her path. The nomadic males had penetrated deeper into the territory than anyone realized. They were close, perhaps within a mile. She could smell their foreign scent on the evening breeze, the sharp, aggressive odor of males looking for a fight. Nosikitok had 1 cub still waiting at the old den and 2 already at the new location. She was caught between 2 impossible choices, and somewhere in the gathering darkness, 3 of the most dangerous predators in Africa were closing in on her position. Nosikitok made her decision in seconds. She raced back toward the old den, where the 3rd cub waited alone, moving faster than she had during any previous journey. Every instinct screamed at her that time was running out. The stars were emerging in the darkening sky, and in the distance she could hear the deep, threatening roars of the nomadic males announcing their presence. They were challenging Oldonyo, calling him out to fight for his territory and his pride. The lioness reached the old den, breathing hard, her sides heaving from the desperate sprint. The remaining leopard cub was crying frantically, having been left alone for nearly 20 minutes, an eternity for such a young animal. She grabbed the baby gently but quickly and immediately began the return journey to the new den. But now she faced a terrible problem. The most direct route would take her straight through the area where the males were likely to clash. She chose a longer path, circling wide through rougher terrain. The ground was rocky and uneven, slowing her progress. Thorny bushes tore at her fur and scratched the cub she carried, but she pushed forward relentlessly. Above her, the moon rose full and bright, illuminating the landscape in silver light, beautiful to human eyes, but dangerous for a lioness trying to move unseen with precious cargo. Then she heard it. The sounds of combat erupting behind her. Oldonyo had engaged the nomadic males, and the battle was fierce. The roars were deafening, mixed with snarls of rage and pain. Lions rarely fight to the death, but when they do, it's a terrifying display of nature's raw power. 4 massive males, each weighing over 400 pounds, were tearing into each other with claws and fangs designed to kill prey much larger than themselves. Nosikitok's heart was torn between 2 loyalties. Every fiber of her being wanted to return and help Oldonyo. Pride members are supposed to support each other in battle, but she had these cubs depending on her, waiting for her. If she abandoned them now to join the fight, they would die alone in the darkness. She kept moving forward, each step away from the battle, feeling like a betrayal of her pride mate who was fighting alone. The sounds of the fight grew more desperate. She could distinguish Oldonyo's voice among the chaos. He was taking a beating from the 3 younger males. Even the bravest, strongest lion cannot defeat 3 opponents simultaneously. Nashipai and Selenkei's roars joined the battle now, the females rushing in to help their male. In normal circumstances, Nosikitok would be there with them, using their collective strength to drive away the intruders. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, Nosikitok reached the new den. She placed the third cub with its siblings, who immediately crawled toward their adoptive mother, desperate for reassurance and milk after the traumatic separation. She let them nurse briefly, their small bodies trembling against her, but she couldn't stay. The sounds of battle were fading, which could mean either victory or terrible defeat for Oldonyo. She made a decision that demonstrated just how complex animal emotions can be. She would hide the cubs deep in the crevice, block the entrance with brush and rocks, and then return to help her pride. The leopard babies were as safe as she could make them for now. Her loyalty to Oldonyo and her sister lionesses demanded that she fight alongside them, even if it meant risking her own life. As Nosikitok raced back toward the battle, the night fell silent. No more roars, no more snarls, just an ominous, terrible quiet that could mean only one thing. The fight was over, and she was about to discover whether her pride had survived or been destroyed. Nosikitok arrived at the battlefield to find devastation. The ground was torn up from the fighting, bushes flattened, and dark stains of blood marked the earth where the combat had been most intense. Oldonyo lay on his side, breathing heavily, his magnificent mane matted with blood and dirt. Deep claw marks ran across his shoulders and face, and one of his eyes was swollen shut. But he was alive, and more importantly, he was still there. He hadn't been driven away. The three nomadic males had retreated, but not far. They stood just 50 yards away, watching and waiting. All three bore wounds from the battle, torn ears, bleeding faces, limping gaits. Nashipai had a deep gash across her hindquarters, and Selenke was favoring her right front paw. The fight had been brutal for everyone involved, but it wasn't finished. The nomads were regrouping, preparing for a second assault. Nosikitok positioned herself between the wounded Oldonyo and the three intruders, joining Nashipai and Selenke in a defensive line. Now, the pride females were united, standing together as they were meant to. The nomadic males saw this new arrival and assessed the changed situation. 4 lions against 3, the odds had shifted, though not decisively. The largest nomad, a huge male with a black-tipped mane, roared a challenge directly at the females. What happened next demonstrated why lionesses are considered the true backbone of any pride. While male lions are larger and stronger, females are faster, more agile, and when fighting together, incredibly coordinated. The 3 lionesses didn't wait for the males to attack again. They charged first, moving as a unified force. Their strategy was perfect. Nashipai went high at the big male's throat, Selenke attacked his vulnerable hindquarters, and Nosikitok targeted his front legs, trying to bring him down. The nomadic male was caught off guard by their aggressive tactics. He stumbled backward, trying to defend against 3 attackers simultaneously. His 2 brothers rushed to help him, but now they faced a serious problem. Behind the fighting females, Oldonyo had risen to his feet. Despite his injuries, despite his exhaustion, the pride male was not finished. He limped forward with a roar that shook the ground, and suddenly the nomads found themselves surrounded. The battle that followed was faster and more chaotic than the first fight. Lions moved in blurs of tawny fur and flashing claws, roars splitting the night air. Nosikitok felt claws rake across her side, but ignored the pain, focusing entirely on protecting her pride. She and her sister lionesses fought with the desperate courage of mothers defending their home, because that's exactly what they were doing. If these males took over the pride, every cub in the territory would die, including 3 special spotted babies hidden in a den 3 miles away. The turning point came when Nashipai managed to lock her jaws onto the big male's front leg. He screamed in pain and fury, thrashing violently to shake her loose. In that moment of distraction, Oldonyo crashed into him with the full weight of his 400-pound body, and both males went down in a tangle of limbs and teeth. The impact was tremendous, raising a cloud of dust that briefly obscured the fighters. When the dust cleared, the nomadic male was limping away badly, blood streaming from multiple wounds. His brothers, seeing their leader injured and facing determined opposition, made the calculation that all animals make in the wild, this territory wasn't worth dying for. They could find easier targets elsewhere. Slowly, with frequent backward glances and defiant roars to save face, all three nomads retreated into the darkness. The pride had won, but at a terrible cost. As Nosikitok looked at her wounded pride mates, especially Oldonyo, who could barely stand, she realized their troubles were far from over. In the African wilderness, weakness attracts predators like blood attracts sharks. And every hunter for miles around would soon know that this pride was vulnerable. The following days were critical for the pride's survival. Oldonyo's injuries were severe enough that he couldn't hunt or patrol the territory effectively. He spent most of his time resting in the shade, licking his wounds, relying on his lionesses to provide food and security. Nashipai and Selenkai took over the hunting duties, working together to bring down smaller prey that two lionesses could handle alone. The pride's territory went unmarked, their borders undefended, a dangerous situation that invited new challenges. But something remarkable happened during this recovery period. Nosikitok brought the three leopard cubs back to the main den area, and for the first time, the entire pride truly accepted them. Perhaps it was because Nosikitok had proven her loyalty by fighting alongside them when it mattered most. Perhaps the other lions finally understood that these spotted cubs were not a threat, but simply babies who needed protection. Whatever the reason, the barriers between species continued to dissolve. Nashipai, who had initially tried to kill the leopard cubs, now tolerated them sleeping near her own resting spot. Selenkai would occasionally groom them with her rough tongue, the same way she groomed lion cubs. Even Oldonyo, during his recovery, allowed the leopard babies to play near him without showing any aggression. The cubs, now over a month old, were thriving under this unexpected collective care, growing stronger and more confident each day. The leopard cubs began showing behaviors unique to their species. They were more solitary than lion cubs, often exploring alone rather than in a group. Their climbing instincts were incredibly strong. By 6 weeks old, they could scale trees that lion cubs wouldn't even attempt. Nosikitok watched these differences with patient curiosity rather than concern, understanding somehow that these children, though not her own species, needed to develop according to their own nature. Scientists who later documented this adoption estimated that the leopard cubs stayed with Nosikitok for approximately 3 months before their natural instincts to become solitary hunters began to emerge. This is actually close to the natural timeline. Leopard mothers typically begin teaching their cubs independence around this age. The transition was gradual, with the young leopards spending more time away from the pride, eventually establishing their own territories in the surrounding areas. What makes this story so profound is what it teaches us about the nature of maternal love. Nosikitok had every biological reason to reject or kill these cubs. They were a different species, natural competitors, and a drain on her resources. Yet she chose compassion over instinct, healing over hatred. Her decision to protect these leopards, even at great personal risk, reminds us that the bonds between mother and child can transcend even the deepest evolutionary programming. If this incredible true story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss these amazing documentaries about the natural world. Your support helps us bring more of these extraordinary stories to light. We have many more fascinating wildlife stories waiting for you. Click on the next video to continue your journey into the remarkable lives of African animals. Tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed an unexpected act of compassion in nature? We love hearing your stories and experiences. The last confirmed sighting of Nosikitok with her adoptive leopard cubs was 3 months after she found them beneath that acacia tree. All 3 leopards survived to independence, a remarkable achievement, considering that 70% of leopard cubs die before reaching adulthood. Nosikitok herself went on to successfully raise her own lion cubs the following year. proving that her capacity for love was infinite, extending to both her own species and beyond. In the vast African wilderness, where survival is everything, she showed the world that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in following the rules nature wrote, but in having the courage to break them for the sake of love.